massive human trafficking. It's a record 288 people arrested.
They're not reporting the real numbers.
The numbers are segmented and they are fictitious.
I started my career in 1997 in the United States Border Patrol. It was one of the most violent times in recent Border Patrol history. I made my bones and my reputation on that border. I believe what is happening on the border today is intentional.
We have people in the United States of America that breed children in order to sell them.
Our own government is facilitating the absolute destruction of the American immigration system, and I can prove it point by point. I'm unafraid to speak the truth. This is just data-driven and experience-driven.
So I already told you what we did when we briefed Trump on the originations and what he did, based on the intel we had at the time. Then enter Fauci and the media. No, the Chinese would never do this. It's not about, no, it didn't come from them. Then the wet bat thing came out and some other goofy whatever.
Right.
Okay, what did we just learn 6 weeks ago? Gina Haspel, as director of the CIA, under Trump, authorized 6 case officers and intelligence analysts to be paid off so that they would change their assessment on COVID origination.
Correct.
That's not a Kash Patel thing.
That's CIA.
That's a CIA institutional decision to spend taxpayer dollars to lie to the world where COVID came from because it fit the narrative that Fauci and the media wanted out there, along with Gina Haspel, because she didn't want Donald Trump to get the credit for reading the intel right and making the hard right decision. But what happens is we're 2 years down the road from that, 3, and that story's been written. You know, that iron has been cast. So half the public is like, what are you guys talking about? That's a right-wing conspiracy. And this is why it's so important to keep drilling at that work, because many more of these instances of conduct will come to light if brave whistleblowers, congressional oversight. And
that's given me a lot of hope.
We got 2 new revelations from the Trump Assassination Task Force. According to their report, the Secret Service agent who spotted Ryan Ruth in the bushes outside Trump's golf course was only 5 feet away when he opened fire and missed him. Not once, not twice, 6 times. He missed him 6 times from 5 feet. How does a trained agent who passed the firearms test miss a target away, 5 feet away? That's not all. The report says the Secret Service found out at 2:30 in the morning that Trump would be golfing later that day, but they didn't secure the course, allowing Ruth to camp out for 12 hours before anyone saw him. Meanwhile, Ruth...
Let's talk about the timing of this. Remember, Tulsi Gabbard was in Congress, and she and I collaborated on a lot of these efforts to stop our meddling, the U.S. meddling in Syria, and now she's been named as the head of DNI. Well, I think that was the signal to the deep state to go in for the kill and get this over with, because Trump and some of his nominees, like Tulsi Gabbard, are signaling that we are not going to carry on the policies of Obama and the deep state.
So that's why, I'm going to throw something out at you right up front here. They know exactly who owns these drones and what they're doing in the sky. But they don't want to tell you for a reason. The reason is the United States government and the deep staters involved in it, they don't want to scare you with their own inadequacy. Folks, I'm telling you right now, they know who these drones belong to. We are at real risk here. Our airspace is not secure. They don't know what to do with these drones. And, I said bottom line up front, so I hate teases because they're for morons. Oh, stay tuned later in the show. If you like the show, you'll stay no matter what. I'm 95% sure, if not more, it's China or some foreign adversary has some role in it. Could be wrong. I'm throwing it out there, and I'm basing it on a few different things.
Guess what? I bet you never thought that important piece of mail that you were looking for, that you can't find, you call the people, they say they mailed it, you say you didn't mail it, I didn't get it, where is it? I'm looking for a check, I'm looking for a gift card, I'm looking for some important documents from family and friends, like what's going on? I bet you never thought it was in the trash. All your stuff, like bills you've been looking for, bank statements, checks from anywhere, refund checks,
American legend, an Afghan American and former U.S. Army non-commissioned officers traveled to Afghanistan after the collapse and reports that the Taliban has been benefiting from U.S. cash shipments sent to the Afghan Central Bank. This is American funds. And that sanctioned terrorists are diverting U.S. aid meant for the Afghan people. Why are we giving the Taliban millions in taxpayers' dollars while they hold Americans hostage and are killing the Afghan people? And in my opinion, sir, they will hate us for free. We don't need to be giving them money.
We're not giving the Taliban anything. As I discussed with Congressman Mast, we are providing money, as many other countries are, to UN agencies, NGOs, to help the Afghan people.
And these agencies are funding the Taliban. Reports are saying between 40 and 80 million U.S. tax dollars are given to the Taliban every dadgum week. I mean, is that acceptable?
According to the report that I read and that the Congressman referred to, the CIGAR's report, of the approximately $8 billion that the international community, including the United States, has dedicated to Afghanistan, about $10 million of that is 0.1%, has no doubt gotten to the Taliban in terms
I don't care if it's a dadgum penny. I don't care if it's a penny. I mean, for you to sit up here and admit that our enemies, I mean, these people swear to hate Christians and Jews, and that takes care of about everybody in this dadgum room. And we're sending them, I don't care if it's 1%, and you can, but let me tell you, $10 million is a hell of a lot of money to the people I represent.
Why in God's name would you ever trust this government for anything? Welcome to Truth with J.J. Carroll. This is a point I made when I was in the United States Border Patrol, when people were talking about government health care. And they would say, well, what do you think about it? You work in the government. And I worked with some of the greatest patriots, smartest guys in the Border Patrol and ICE and all the other agencies, task forces that I worked with. But I worked with a lot of people that should have never been in the positions of authority they were in. When you're looking at that guy dump the mail out, when you listen to Blinken actually admitting to giving millions of dollars and lying about it, but giving millions of dollars to the Taliban, then it's okay. Those are the men that are going to make your decisions on your health care. Those men, the DMV type. Why would anyone in their right mind believe our government is good at anything? Quickly, tell me one segment of our government that is functioning correctly and is ascending. You're going to tell me our military? Our military right now, we would be solely dependent on our nuclear long-range missiles to defend us. We have 41,000 deficit in recruits alone. You have fired or released the best of the best in our warfighters because they wouldn't take the government jab. Whatever happened to my body, my choice? You have 15,000 transgender mental patients in the military right now. Some of them are high-ranking, wearing dresses and lipstick and talking about diversity and equity and inclusion. No, how about you give me men that have been trained to point their gun downrange and kill the enemy, period. Why would anyone trust our government to do anything even as simple as delivering the mail? And I will bet you a month's salary that guy, that mailman, he's not fired. The mailman's union or whatever the heck they got is covering for him. I will guarantee that. I watch people in the Border Patrol, egregious, absolutely egregious, almost criminal, keep their jobs. I played those clips today as a cold open because I want to remind you, this is the world that we're living in. This is who is running our country. These people are immoral. They're evil. There's a difference. I always like to use Jimmy Carter as the example. He's done incredible work humanitarian work. I don't like him. I don't like any of his policies. I was in second grade when he was became president. I remember even then, and going up to sixth grade when I kind of got my first taste of politics. My father was on those details, those presidential details. So I'd follow it. I like, okay, maybe see my dad. And even then I remember something's not right. But Carter didn't hate America. Carter didn't do anything malicious to destroy America. He made horrible decisions. But he wasn't a traitor. He was a patriot. Just because you're terrible, you suck at being the president doesn't make you a traitor. What makes you a traitor is somebody that sells their position of authority for millions of dollars, enriches their family. A traitor is somebody that comes into the position of Secretary of DHS, opens the borders, allows 30 million people to come in, upend our demographics in America from citizens to non-citizens, allows PLA soldiers to pour into America, well over 250,000 special interest aliens that we know of, and I'm telling you that we're closer to over 1 million SIA/terrorists in our nation. Absolutely. Millions of gang members are in America. We have a standing army of our enemy inside America. I don't know. Sometimes I think as I'm laying the show out and I'm say a quick prayer to God, let me be articulate, let me be concise, help my message to get out. Sometimes I don't know if I'm even using the correct verbiage because it is so daunting to try to explain. It's like every morning I wake up and I start going through all my research and I'm writing a new book, so I'm doing that, and I'm hit. It's like hit with a sledgehammer over and over and over again with new news. Joe Biden pardons, we're going to talk about that, pardons 1,500 people in a day. January 6ers rot in jail. Rot. Just sit there and rot in jail. For what? Being entrapped? That's a whole nother, that's like a whole nother show. We'll talk about that, about the next vault guest that we're going to have, and I can't wait to tell you about her. Donald Trump is the president in, what does it look like right now? A little over a month, 40-something days. He cannot do this alone. We have got to be his support, meaning whatever's asked of us, we've got to stand up and do it. At the very minimum, you have to speak clearly and confidently without being apologetic or stammering of what you believe in and why. Because the enemy is not Jimmy Carter and the old Democrats that kind of wanted, more welfare, better education system with the Department of Education succumbing to special interests. I get that's politics. We're not talking about politics anymore. We're talking about the systematic, strategic, and purposeful destruction of America to fundamentally transform America. Those are traitors. It's one thing if they went, this crazy left, went in front of Congress, changed the Constitution, created laws that took us down this road. And the Supreme Court, through challenges, said, nope, that law is constitutional. That's different. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people that sabotaged the American rule of law, that they're paid to oversee. I gave this analogy today when I was doing a piece on the vault. And we were talking about Secretary Mayorkas. He's a traitor and should go to jail. But we also talked about his lieutenants. And we played a piece from Todd Bensman when he was on Steve Bannon's War Room. And he laid out his lieutenants. And I write about it in my previous book, and I'm going to write about it in this one. We're talking about high-level senior leader individuals that swore an oath, get a paycheck to support and defend the Constitution, support law enforcement officers, Border Patrol, ICE, in the deportation efforts, and they systematically destroyed from inside everything that we were trying to do as Border Patrol agents and ICE officers. That's treason. Why would you trust our government in any facet of your life? That is a question we all need to ask ourselves and answer honestly. My answer to you is I do not trust our government. And that means when Donald Trump gets in office, just because in office you have tens of thousands of government officials that are not voted in, they're placed there. Senior executive service cannot be fired. They're going to stay there forever. I touched on January 6th as those poor men rot in jail. You go to the vault and you're going to see our first guest in the vault, Dr. Juliet Engel. Incredible interview, 2 hours and 42 minutes. It's worth every second of it. Our next guest is going to be Sarah Maccabee. Incredibly strong Christian woman. Her husband was a deputy sheriff outside of Nashville that is rotting in jail and has already eclipsed 35 months of his 70-month sentence. A sheriff. You want to talk about having your life upended? You want to talk about Sarah Maccabee and her husband in that childbearing age, have your life literally paused as the world continues on and you don't? Our government set up those people January 6th. I was a federal agent. I know what the rules are. Can we be in that crowd? Absolutely. Is that a smart law enforcement tactic to have plainclothes officers in the crowd? Absolutely. But we become like NPCs in a video game. We're non-participating players. That's your role. You are there to observe. If you see a felony happening in your presence, then you have to act. But if you're sitting there and you're inciting the riot and you are encouraging and pushing people into a crime scene, that's called entrapping people. This is law enforcement 101. Go to the vault. I pour in a daily take every day in the vault. And we are going to interview some of the most intriguing, interesting, thoughtful people that you can imagine. We're going to fill that vault up with endless hours upon hours of just, you want to sit there and listen to what these people say. And I also want you to go to SAT123, sat123.com/JJ. Why? Because you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared. Look what's happening in New Jersey. Do we even know who's controlling those drones? They're going to knock out satellites. They're going to knock out cell towers. What is it? Who are they? Be prepared. SAT123/JJ. SAT123.com. As I say, my son goes to school with a ballistic vest, backpack every single day. Daddy's on it. My son's there. I want to bring in my first guest in just a second because this guy's very fascinating. I've spoken to him before. He's an acquaintance of a friend that we share, Jason James. Both this gentleman, Sam Cooper, and Jason James are from Canada. Sam Cooper, I'm going to read you his bio, okay? I'm going to go out real quick, go into my phone. I'm just going to read it to you, okay? Because what he's discovering and documenting in Canada is happening here. What happens here happens there and vice versa. Don't think it doesn't in Canada. Sam Cooper is an award-winning investigative journalist and best-selling author who has presented his anti-corruption findings to Canadian law enforcement agencies, officials in the Pentagon, financial and legal professionals, and academics. In 2021, Cooper's first book, Willful Blindness, debuted as a #1 bestseller on Amazon. In Canada, his findings on the CCP, China, leveraging of fentanyl and human trafficking, money laundering, and political corruption against North America has been influential, with some Trump administration officials and read among security experts from Taiwan to London to Canberra. After reporting for almost 20 years in Canadian media outlets in 2023, Cooper started the independent journalism platform, The Bureau. You need to go to that, thebureau.news. I was in there swimming around today, pulling up articles. It's like a treasure trove if you want to know what's happening with China, CCP, and the unraveling of everything in Canada. Canada is run by a buffoon. I don't know if I'm assuming Sam feels the same way. This guy's a buffoon. And what the Bureau.news does, it reports on national security and geopolitical matters in North America. With that, I want to bring in and welcome Sam Cooper. Come on in, sir. How you doing?
Glad to be here. I'm great. It's good to talk to you again. I'm really glad to be here with you.
Well, thank you. Do you agree with what I made that statement, that what happens in Canada happens here and vice versa? Do you agree with that?
I agree with that 100%. And when you and I talked, I told you that Canadian patriots in the 90s leaked documents that I've been able to access and report on. And you called our sitting prime minister a buffoon. A lot of people would agree with you in Canada. And JJ, it's worse than that. His networks are directly associated in my documented research to People's Republic of China threat actors. These are the people you've pointed to, JJ, that are involved in those shipping entities in Mexico that are tied to the triads and the cartels. So really, very few people know this. And so when your incoming president points to Canada, not many people understand how deep the concerns of connectivity to Chinese triad and state actor activity goes in Canada, but it's very deep.
Yeah, because when Trump starts talking about Canada, a lot of people go, whoa, what is he talking about, Canada? Well, you look at your immigration policies in Canada. They're atrocious. And they're atrocious because it is strategic in what they're doing. They know that the vast majority of the immigrants coming into Canada are just staying for a second and they're moving south. They're crossing into our border. 85 nationalities have been arrested in the last year in the Swan sector in the Border Patrol. However, talking to Jason James and people like yourself, there is a significant amount of these immigrants, and they are legal immigrants coming into Canada. They are setting down roots and they are changing Canada. Canada does not have a population of 350 million people like America does, where we can consume or absorb, a million or two, but we can't absorb 50 million. You guys are on a train track to destruction, I believe.
Yeah, JJ, if you look at the front page of my website, I brought up to the top again a story I interviewed you for and other experts. And I said, look, I've got documents that came out of U.S. immigration control, went into Canadian intelligence in the 90s, and we have a patriotic Canadian immigration officer in Hong Kong in the 90s warning his masters in Ottawa that the Chinese triads, in connection to Chinese communist rulers in Beijing, have infiltrated Canada's system, and they're using Canada to flood in what's called the Big Circle Boy triad leaders. And this was happening in the 90s. And a quote from this Canadian official, who's now deceased, bless his soul, said, "If Canada doesn't recognize this threat, the society will be transformed by criminals and criminal actors linked to China in ways that communist leaders are using transnational triads to facilitate human trafficking and drug trafficking into North America." Now, does that warning sound familiar? And this was about 30 years ago. And as my source, his name is Brian McAdam, warned, he was rode out of government and Ottawa buried it. And the suspicion is, and I believe it's quite plausible, that leaders in Ottawa were unfortunately corrupted by these Chinese threat networks that had infiltrated our immigration system. It sounds wild, but the documents say this is happening, and it happened.
Well, it's not wild. You're looking at in America, you have marijuana growers in places like Oklahoma, Maine, throughout the Southeast, because that's a cash crop. So now, as specialists have told me that are like you in the specialists in that world of China, they're using that drug money to fund all of their nefarious activities in America. They don't have to wire money in, get caught in some wire transfer. They have millions, tens of millions of dollars of hard currency, American currency, that's untraceable. Are you seeing that the same type of system or same type of nefarious activity in Canada with the Chinese?
Absolutely, JJ. We can go a bit deep on this one. What you have in Oklahoma, Maine, over in Washington on the West Coast is Fujian organized crime. And this ties in to my documentation that says the highest levels of the Communist Party in Fujian, that's a southern, very smuggling heavy province of China, made direct connections with the Hong Kong triad leaders in the 90s. And so we're talking about, this goes right up to President Xi Jinping's networks involved in human trafficking. It's those Fujian networks that are running your pot grow ops in the U.S. And now the documentation from U.S. congressional investigations say that cash is being used for political interference operations and to fund fentanyl, right? And so you asked about Canada. I'm telling you, command and control for those Fujian crime threat networks that goes all the way up to Xi Jinping's networks is run from Toronto and Vancouver. And I believe this is the real concern of people in the Trump administration. Why can I say that? Because one of them, David Asher, read my book, Willful Blindness. He reached out to me. He was a senior investigator in Trump administration 1. And he says these DEA investigations are seeing all the significant phone calls for command and control going up to Toronto and Vancouver. That's who's running this massive money laundering for the Mexican cartels that are pushing that fentanyl into your cities.
I'm also reading too is that the Mexican cartels, the savages that run the Mexican cartels, have now become subservient to the Chinese. Are you hearing the same thing when you talk about command and control?
Absolutely. I wrote that in my 2021 book. I heard it directly from my Canadian federal police sources who work very closely with senior DEA. They get information from American intelligence community. And they said, look, if you want to use corporate terminology, the controlling mind of the Mexican cartels now relates to Beijing, right? Because this is an incentivized trade. The precursors going into Mexico. There's a 14K triad, Sunneon triad. They're set up in Mexico. You may recall the case of the Mexican whale, the biggest methamphetamine trafficker caught by the DEA in 2007. They found 200 million in his Mexico City mansion, a naturalized Chinese Mexican. Right. So I do think that the Chinese triads are command and control, certainly very influential. If you don't want to take command and control from me, look, the Mexicans aren't running fentanyl and human trafficking into the States without China being involved at the front of that supply chain.
You're right. And when I'm looking at your website, the Bureau.news, what struck me is, and I've heard this many, many times, the Chinese, their warfare is hit you at every angle. It is not just, I'm going to hit you with drugs or I'm going to do human smuggling. I'm going to hit you at all angles. And I'm going to tell you, I would like to have your comment on one of the articles. I have 3 of them that I'd like to talk to you about. But I want to talk about this one. And one of the headlines, I don't have it written down precisely, is fake Chinese incomes fuel Toronto's real estate market. Talk to us about that, because you think that's not a big deal. That's all connected. It's the destruction of the economy in Canada because they're just buying up property, just like they're doing in America. Please expand on that.
Absolutely. I'm glad you picked up that story. A friend from the U.S. that I'm working with recently, I just shared that. That was a huge story for me. About 200,000 views for a one-person startup investigation to be beating Canadian mainstream media in investigative reporting and views. That was huge. And what it is, look, it shows that Canadian banks at scale are involved in this model of international money laundering that my work uncovered. It's called the Vancouver model. And so this is the very same thing that happened in your TD US bank case. You know, that's about a $3 billion American fine. Cartels, Colombians, the Chinese triads at the top, laundering money, fentanyl cash through US banks. This is being run out of Canadian cities, and you've got all kinds of people in government, I believe, and the banks at high levels turning a blind eye to this underground banking. And so what that is, very simply, the Chinese triads are set up in cities around the world. They're all over Latin America. They, unfortunately, they put agents within the diaspora to threaten and leverage the communities. And so they're collecting drug cash in every city in the world where there's a large Chinese diaspora. They're banking it underground, and they're using, through bribery, threats, other ways, they're getting that into banks. And so that's what's happening in that HSBC story. And you mentioned the idea, is there something strategic and intentional to it? Again, 5 years ago, people would have said tinfoil hat. But my most, cutting edge research, including U.S. government sources, says China is strategically laundering money through Latin American cities, through Canadian cities, now through American cities, to corrupt, to destabilize. So look, I won't go off on a tangent, but look at the story of the New York City mayor and how he said the FBI got him. Look, elections are won and lost with fundraising. What does that tell you? He's traveling around the world to Turkey and China. He's raising funds from bad people. So you're right, it all ties in. Collapse of society with drugs, corrupt the influential people, corrupt the banks, and that's strategic. Not only that, you start driving up the real estate, and you're driving out, the good, honest people that can't, get a home in the city. Who moves in? The drug traffickers.
One of the things I want to ask you a question, because I feel this way, and I had this discussion with someone today, and I'm just curious, you being an investigative journalist, and you've been blowing this whistle for a very long time, ringing this bell, I should say.
Yeah.
Do you feel as if Canadians are waking up to your message? Like sometimes I feel immigration, that's my specialty, and I've been ringing the bell, and I feel as if people are beginning to wake up, and I'm seeing the change within blue cities and blue states. Do you feel that any hope? Like, I don't have massive hope, okay, Sam? I'm not like a Pollyanna. Oh, everything's gonna be great. Yeah. I know that we have a long way to go. Do you see any breakthrough with your Canadian friends and citizens?
I'm like you. I'm very much a skeptic and a realist. I know that, let me be very blunt. I indicated that the sitting Liberal government in Ottawa and the industrialists behind them should have ties to the people in Hong Kong and China that have corrupted our ports and run the fentanyl in. That's very serious. So you do have a population that, we're welcoming people in North America. Most of us are immigrants or come from immigrant families, right? But I do think that there is a growing sense, and you just saw it in your recent presidential election, that there's a silent majority that thinks that something is broken with regards to immigration policies. And again, North America is very much, immigrant societies, but people have recognized that hostile states, I do think, I've been writing about this for 10 years and how hostile states weaponize organized crime. I would say within the past 2 years, my message is starting to get through. I'll tell you why. Look, I've faced a lot of slings and arrows for saying China uses organized crime to infiltrate our politics, infiltrate our banks, send fentanyl in wittingly to kill Americans. And yet, the New York Times ran a story this week saying a long-term huge Chinese gangster in that city is being used by Beijing. So I see that, the paper of record in New York, a very Democratic-leaning one, has adopted my breaking news from a few years ago.
There's another article that I want to talk on, and I appreciate your time, but I find this fascinating because it is so interconnected with ours. Look, just today, Joe Biden gave over 1,500 pardons and commuted sentences. A lot of them were to Chinese spies in America. Chinese spies he just released. He released a pedophile that had over 50,000 child porn images on his computer and released him. We're compromised here in America. You have another article that I want to touch on that I saw. It jumped out at me and I read it and it was very good. And the title is CBSA Whistleblower Believes Transnational Gangs Have Compromised Agency Databases Helping Terrorists, Spies, and Mafias Enter Canada. And why that article jumped out at me, because I don't believe Trump is putting this pressure on Canada, on your guy Trudeau, just out of willy-nilly. Like he just found this beta male and I'm going to pick on him because I'm a bully. He doesn't do that. His is strategic. He's putting pressure on him because your guy Trudeau has been hurting America intentionally, has been allowing all of these people that you are showing in this article, transnational gangs, to come into Canada. They're working in Canada. The money's in America. So they're going to bring in all of these nefarious groups and push them down to America. Can you talk more on that article for me?
Yeah, the article, great nose again. I'm going to talk to Luc Sabarin, a Canadian patriot from Quebec tomorrow again. And you know what? He reached out to me and said, look, he recognized what President Trump's threat of against Canada meant. It meant there's a real problem, and he was there. He was a whistleblower who tried to tell his bosses that he believed Mexican cartels, Iranian state-sponsored threat networks, so they work together, had infiltrated Canada Border Services. And so he believes that speaks to the story of hundreds of people, as CBS reported, on the U.S. terror watch list, waltzing right through the Canadian border and down into the United States. And so this relates to hundreds of thousands of lost or stolen passports. These, I'm not sure exactly where they were stolen. I think should be Eastern European. Mr. Sabarin couldn't give me that level of detail because he doesn't want to get criminally charged for pointing to classified intelligence. But he became aware all these passports are lost or stolen. It's organized crime, could be Russians, Chinese triads, Iranian Hezbollah actors. Get them up and they use them to run terrorists into Canada so that they can, as you say, they want to access the real target, the United States, the leader of the free world. So it's a complex story, but what it points to is the very weakness that President Trump talks about, that is Canada's border, is problematic, more than problematic. This is not about putting some police on the border. It's about infiltration of the most serious organized crime into Canada's legal systems to the point where they can get access to computers. And Mr. Sabarin believes, alter records. And so, yes, that is what I think the intelligence that Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump, has been hearing about as he prepares to take office.
Sam, I appreciate your time, man. You are the expert on this. I would love to have you back on multiple times in the future because this is not going away. This problem will not go away. China is the number one adversary of North America, both Canada and America. Your website is amazing, thebureau.news. Can you talk to us just briefly about the subscription base? Because this is important. And I tell my son, I have a young son, 13. I tell him, listen, man, nothing's for free. It's time, talent, or treasure, a combination thereof, or all of them, right? So yeah, this is the new medium. for information. Yeah. It's no longer mainstream news. No one even watches them. I don't even watch Fox News. I don't watch anything. I get all of my information from investigative journalists like you through paywalls or X or subscriptions that I get, or very, very scrutinized websites that I trust. So yours is, some of it's free and some of it is behind a paywall. Can you just explain or just tell our audience about your website and then the cost associated with it? Because I think this is important. I think we need to, instead of spending $250 on cable, that $7, $8 every subscription goes to MSNBC. Why would we fund our enemy when we can take our money and fund the people that are bringing us the real news like yourself?
Yeah, JJ, you nailed it. And as for talking again, no one gets this from the inside like you. So I would love to talk over and again, because these are, informing the electorate in the United States and Canada is the way that we secure our sovereignty for the future, which is under attack. So look, yeah, I started the Bureau.News in 2023 after breaking major stories about how China had interfered in Canada's recent federal elections deeply and favored the sitting government in Ottawa. And so I've been in this, in media for 20 years. I had wanted to be, a law enforcement or lawyer type professional. I went the journalism route instead, but I quickly recognized, as an investigator and teller of truth, you can do the work just as great law enforcement people like yourself, JJ, do. And so that's what motivates me. Why did I do it? Look, I work with lawyers all the time. I became, one of the best journalists in North America as a subject matter expert in these areas. And so I don't need an editor or a corporate boss telling me what to write about or what to take out of the story. I use 20 years of wisdom and I put it all into that reporting. And you're not the only one that's noticed. As you tell your son, look, subject matter experts are the future of information and news reporting. That's what I'm building. And so people go to the website. You can usually read the stories for free for a few days before the paywall gets slapped up. But look, it's $10 a month US. And I'm going to be reporting more and more and more on US focused stories. Look, I may even be setting up shop in the United States pretty soon because, JJ, look, I want to tell you this from my heart. My startup is now making enough to pay me what I was making in my former big media job, but I've got legal costs, and there's a lot of bad people in Canada that would like to see me out of business due to the exposure of the corruption I'm pointing to. And it would be the same corruption I think President-elect Trump would be worried about. So look, if I report more on the United States, I've got better protection from your freedom of speech laws. There's better law enforcement, although you've got your problems there as well. I'm going to report more and more on the U.S. So I just want to tell all your great listeners, please come to that website. And you're going to read, just facts, just the facts, ma'am, just the evidence. I'm like a law enforcement person myself. I don't twist anything. I write well, I write truthful, and I get action. That's what I do.
No, that's great. And we need more of you, and we're getting more of you. That's what's taken over with X and the internet that we've now taken over. And the left has said repeatedly since the election of Donald Trump, where was our weakness? Their weakness was they didn't have podcast, and they had no control over the podcast or the websites that were now feeding the information and controlling the narrative instead of them controlling the narrative. So you're welcome back anytime. We will have you back for sure. Sam Cooper, go to thebureau.news, thebureau.news, and support him. Just like we asked you to support our show, support him as well. Sam, thank you very much. Have a great weekend, my friend.
Thanks so much, JJ.
All right. Take care. Man, that was an incredible interview. I loved it. Don't you love hearing truth? Just like Pet Club 24/7, Kristen always says, and I love it because I always said truth has a different ring to it, but Kristen said it in a different way. And when she said it, I was like, yep, you're better than me. You're smarter than me. I'm going to use that phrase. And I told her when I was interviewing, I'm stealing that phrase. The phrase is, truth has a different frequency. It's just on a different frequency. And that's why you can hear it. You can understand it. and you absorb it because it's the truth. God created this inside you to hear the truth. So you listen to Sam Cooper. Did that man stutter? Did he hem and haw? Did he do any ums and whoa? I don't know. That's what not everyone that speaks the truth speaks it fluently, right? Some people don't. But the vast majority of people that I have witnessed, when they speak or are speaking to me and they believe what they're saying, are fluid. You ask me questions about immigration, I'm not hemming and hawing. You ask me questions about child sex trafficking, I'm not umming. You ask me about government corruption, I'm not hesitating. I'm firing off facts. Let's go. Right off the top of my head. Boom, boom, boom. Here's the statistics from CBP.gov. They're lying because this organization has already done FOIAs on them and they've already admitted to lying. That's what Sam Cooper was doing. A lot of times I don't listen to the words. I look at the body language and I listen to the cadence. Tells me a lot. I can always go back and listen to the words. But when you do an investigation, interrogation, a lot of times you know it's being recorded. You just sit there and you just look at them. And you just kind of almost disconnect from yourself so you can just kind of just stare at them and see the body language. Like when I was interviewing Dr. Engel and listening to her speak, but really watching her body language and listening to her cadence. The pauses were not pauses of, what do I say next? They were pauses because she was living it, reliving it all over again in her mind. Those were powerful pauses. The first time she paused, I immediately realized what was going on. And I was like, okay, here we go. We're going into the deep recesses of this horror. This is going to be powerful. Get ready. Not get ready as I'm going to take advantage of someone and get information. No, get ready because this woman is going to begin to tell us and me, something very powerful, something that's going to be horrific. It's going to be jarring. Just like when we speak to Sarah Maccabee, you're going to hear things from her. And I interviewed her prior. I interviewed for my documentary. And I asked her something. And I asked her, do you think America is a great nation? We're a shiny city on a hill. And the velocity of what she answered me, the passion she answered me, maybe this is the best way I can describe her answer. It was so crisp and clear that it was unmistakably from her soul. I can't wait to interview her again. I'm going to answer that question again. And you're going to hear her response. And you're going to hear what I heard. And you're going to hear the truth. Not some relegated, chopped up producer look over truth, but just the truth. And that's what makes Worldview Tube special. What makes this platform and other platforms like it special. I will say this about Brandon House. He is generous with his time, talent, and treasure. Our show is starting to grow. He is financing all of these vaults interviews. Just got permission from him today. It is his channel. It is his company. So I will ask, I know who's in charge. Can I go to 2 interviews a month? I believe what I am doing with the help of Logan, I believe what we are creating in the vault is powerful, that it will have an impact. And he didn't hesitate. Go for it. Let's do it. 2 times a month, I'm going to fly from Kansas to the undisclosed location of the Brandon House Studios, Worldview 2 Studios, twice a month to interview 2 very special people every month. I have an interview locked down in February with Todd Bensman. I can't wait. I had him on this show for about 20, 30 minutes, and I got off and I was like, okay, that needs to be 3 hours, because between what I know and what he knows, what I've experienced, what he's experienced, And the whatever small gaps that I have in my knowledge or understanding of the border, and whatever small gaps that he has, we can fill those in, man. And we create a picture for you. He has a different temperament than me. You know who I kind of equate him to? Rodney Scott, the new commissioner of CBP, and I kind of equate myself to Tom Homan. I think that's comparable. Tom Homan just wants to go and burn everything to the ground. That's me too. I don't arrest everybody. Just arrest them all. Arrest them all. We'll sort it out when we get back to the station. I used to say it. We'll sort it out there. Let's just go. We know what we got. Let's go. But you listen to a man like Sam Cooper talk about the corruption and the infiltration of enemies inside the Canadian government. And when he's speaking, I'm just thinking the whole time, he could just be replacing Canada with America. And you know it too. You know it as well as I do. We have to diversify. Swiss America, precious metals, you have to diversify. You don't think what's happening in Canada, you don't think their housing market, if they have a financial crash, that it will not have a direct impact on the minimum, the border states of the northern border states, and that includes New York City? That doesn't trickle down to America? Oh, you better believe it does. Syria's going to war. Middle East is starting to fire up. The only thing holding back World War III is Donald Trump. We got 43 days left, I think it is. Something like that. That's a long time, people. That's a long time for this incompetent old bag of skin that does not know where he's at, and then the people are puppet masters pulling his strings. God only knows what they're planning on doing. You feel it. I know you feel it. Everyone feels it. Hope. Doom. Like, is it get Donald Trump? Is he actually going to be sworn in? Is somebody going to try to kill him? Or going to fire his gun 5 or 6 times from 5 feet away and miss every single time? Do you know how absolutely impossible that is to do? I need you to understand. The course of firing in the United States Border Patrol, it's almost equivalent from every law enforcement. It might deviate just a little bit. One of the first firing points is drawing. You take your non-shooting hand and you put it to your vest, to your chest, and you do a one-handed draw from your holster, punch out from 3 yards out, that's 6 feet. So now I got 2 feet out, so now I'm 4 feet away, and I fire 3 rounds. Then I fire 1 round, then I fire 2 rounds, and then I fire 4 rounds. Do you know how many times? And I have to quarterly qualifications. 4 times 24 is what? 96 times. 96 times I shot at the 3-yard range, the 3-yard mark. 96 different qualifications. Do you know how many times I missed my target? I missed the center ring. Like the center ring. Never the body of an individual, which was a silhouette on a piece of cardboard. 0 times I missed that. Nobody misses. Do you trust your government? And if you do, why? You need to really ask yourself a question. Let's go into something that makes me sick. I mentioned it with Sam Cooper. And that is, today, Joe Biden pardoned 1,500 or more individuals. Can you show this video, please, Logan, of his pardons? This guy talking about his pardons. This is from the White House, so take it for what it's worth.
Outgoing President Joe Biden said on Thursday he was pardoning 39 people convicted of nonviolent crimes and commuting the sentences of nearly 1,500 others who were serving long prison terms. The commutations were announced for those who were placed in home confinement during the COVID-19 pandemic. Biden said these people would have received shorter sentences if charged under today's laws, policies, and practices. As president, I have the great privilege of extending mercy to people who have demonstrated remorse and rehabilitation, restoring opportunity for Americans to participate in daily life and contribute to their communities, and taking steps to remove sentencing disparities for nonviolent offenders, especially those convicted of drug offenses, Biden said in a statement. The White House said that the clemencies granted by Biden were the most ever in a single day. The president indicated that more clemencies and pardons in the weeks ahead, as his administration will continue reviewing clemency petitions.
The devil's in the details. So let's dig into the details. Let's talk about one of the people he pardoned, or he showed clemency to. I don't know if I have that. Can you pull that up, Logan? Because I want to show everybody the picture of this man. Yeah, this guy. Thank you. Former MSU doctoral student. Sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for child porn. Well, did he have like 2 or 3 pictures of child porn, which is already enough that I want to cave that pedophile's head in? Yep, go ahead. Hey, Logan, mark that down so when Congressman Ivey or the illegal alien Congresswoman Ramirez from Chicago, Illinois, says I want to cave someone's skull in. Yep, that guy, right? See that guy right there? Mark that, that I like to take his glasses from him and form like a axe or a pick and jab him in his front lobel and kill him. Absolutely. Mark that down. He didn't have 1, 2, 3, 5, 5,000, 10,000 pictures, 20,000, no, 30, 40, no. Let's try 50,000 pictures. I love my son more than anything in this world, and I've captured his life basically on my iPhone. The last I chose, I think I had like 4,000 pictures of my son. That's insane. I think I have like 10 pictures of me when I was young. 4,000 pictures. My wife probably has 10,000. 15,000 on a person I love for 13 years. This piece of trash, this human scum, has 50,000 images of child pornography. And what does our pedophile in chief, and make this very clear, he is not a sexual deviant. He is a pedophile. Nobody sniffs, touches, caresses young girls in that manner. That is not a pedophile. The commander-in-chief, the pedophile-in-chief, Joe Biden, let this pedophile go. Chinese national. Why would you let a pedophile go? Somebody explain it to me. Outside that you're brain dead and you're stupid and you're a scum sucker and you're a traitor like this jackass up there that doesn't even know where to walk to. He's an idiot. God almighty. Let's go to the next one because it's also a Chinese spy. Let's do it. Let's show it. Another Chinese spy by Biden. Just let another Chinese spy go. Why would you let a Chinese spy? No, I know. Why would you let a Chinese spy go? Why? Because your son's compromised by the Chinese spy. Your son is compromised by CCP. You've allowed in tens of thousands of PLA soldiers into America through open borders. You're compromised. History's going to show this man is so compromised and his administration are traitors and they all need to go to jail. I can't believe my time's almost out, Logan. I'm looking at it, I'm like 40 seconds. You are going to see in the next couple of days, you mark my words, you are going to have, I didn't even know this existed. I think I'm a very intelligent man. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm not an idiot either. You are going to see, and I didn't even know it could be done, preemptive pardons. And do you know who's asking for it? Fauci. You know who else is asking for it? Mayorkas. Why would those two men ask for pardons? Pelosi, January 6th, same thing. Why? Why do they want pardons? Because our federal government is not only evil, they are the enemy of the people.
Welcome to